Hi Photos subscribers. Today we're going to be talking about some of the fascinating history behind photography and how the innovations from film were translated into digital. So join me today as we talk about the innovations which were actually precipitated from the 1921 Nobel Prize winner Albert Einstein. Let's start with the two individuals that took their research to designing something that's called the CCD, which is a charged coupled device. And that's where the CCD name comes from, which we know now as the image sensor. But let's go back to 1969 in Bell Labs, and let's talk about George Smith and his supervisor when they were talking about something that their boss wanted them to look into for a rather interesting innovation, but we'll get into that in details. George Smith's supervisor was Dr. Willard Boyle, and they were both working at Bell Labs in September of 1969. The specific day that both of them looked back to and pointed at was September 8th. But as I understand the history, the boss of Mr. Boyle, William Boyle, it was actually Willard Boyle, but his boss wanted them to look into semiconductors and how they could utilize that technology of integrated circuit semiconductor technology to form what they call a bubble memory. In other words, it's only temporary memory, and it only lasts so long because a bubble is fragile. So they want this memory to be quality, but it is a short-lived memory which passes off to something longer-term storage. At least long enough to determine if it's something worth storing or not. So they called it a bubble memory, and I think we might be able to relate to it best as the memory in our computers. But it's the very same type of memory that our cameras use, but it's designed as our imaging circuit. So the imaging sensor, when our shutter is actuated, only has a certain amount of time that it receives that data, right? Even if it's a long exposure, it's only so long before that memory time shuts off and those semiconductors or diodes or whatever is in the sensor now is receiving that data. So it has so long before the bubble is closed off, and then the information in that bubble is now sealed. So that information in the bubble has to be burst, and that information is written to some longer term storage memory. And that is what the idea was that their boss, Mr. Boyle, and Mr. Smith's boss wanted them to look into. Amazingly, it only took them about an hour to sketch out this idea and to put out the theory of what would work and what wouldn't. So the basic premise of it and where it comes from, the 1921 Nobel Prize winner Albert Einstein, was his theory on the photoelectric effect. And I don't have time to get into the details of that one, but it utilizes, I'm going to suggest this is one of the first documented theories of solid state memory, because that's essentially what it is. There's our solid state memory now that we have in hard drives and other such, thumb drives, etc., is something more long-term, but it is meant to be erasable, and so those bubbles of memory are going to be burst and either written to something else or removed, deleted. So, but that theory, the photoelectric effect, is something not only did Mr. Boyle, or Dr. Boyle, and Mr. Smith use to design the first CCD, charged coupled device, which has become our photosensor, but it's that same technology that we've used as a more stable memory and something that isn't quite the bubble memory that it was designed to be, and eventually led to our our photo sensor. So we've got more to come, but if this has been interesting to you and learning about how your camera works and what is important to your camera and what isn't has added value to your shooting, we would like you to let us know about that in the comments and give this video a thumbs up. And if it's intriguing to you, we have more information coming up about the history of the innovations from film to digital also. So we would appreciate your subscription and stay involved and watch the upcoming interesting history of the innovation from film to digital. Thank you so much. God bless.